Gaza was this experiment of the two-state solution, and it blew up in our face in the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. The IRGC, the Islamic Republic of Iran, has a strategy to apply and to push Islamist ruling over the world. Our main concern is the existential threat, and if they have the capability, they will use it.
And we're back for another episode of Standpoint. I'm Gabe Groisman, and we are here in Jerusalem in the beautiful JNS studios. I'm in town for a few days, and it's such an incredible time to be in Israel for those of us who follow what's happening in the Middle East closely, both from the United States and here in Israel, really anywhere in the world. This is a time sort of great tension, of great excitement. It's almost the way people think of what's happening today in the Middle East is a reflection, maybe it's a self-reflection on whether they're an optimist or a pessimist, because no one really knows what's going to happen next. There's so many moving parts, not just in Israel, not just related to Gaza and the Palestinian Authority, but also all over the Middle East. And we're looking, of course, to Iran. And I was in Tel Aviv for a few days, and everyone in Tel Aviv is speaking about the same thing, which is, when is Iran going to hit? When are we going to hit Iran? What's happening? Jerusalem seems to have a little bit of a different vibe. There's a little more confidence here. But really, we like to bring nuance, and we like to bring understanding of what's actually happening beyond the headlines. So I reached out to a good friend, member of Knesset, Sharren Haskel. She's actually deputy foreign minister of the state of Israel. Very eloquent, very smart, not to put too much pressure on her. I said to her before we spoke, we've known each other for several years, that I really enjoy watching her operate here in Israel, because she's very different than many other members of Knesset here in Israel, because she will say what she thinks. And sometimes it falls on one side of the way people look at a political ideology. Sometimes it'll fall on the other side. But you really understand where she's coming from, and I really appreciate that. And she speaks great English. So, Sharren Haskel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we were just chatting a little before, and of course, like you said, we need to talk more. 30 minutes isn't going to be enough. But I don't know how people listen to these long podcasts that are hours and hours long, so we try to kind of boil it down. My idea is to talk a little bit about the Board of Peace, which is meeting this week. This will probably be published just after that meeting. Also what's happening with Iran, and maybe if we get to it, a little bit about what's happening domestically here in Israel. So just jumping right into it, the Board of Peace is meeting. We're recording this on a Wednesday. They're meeting tomorrow in Washington. The Prime Minister is not going, but the Foreign Minister will be there.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, just generally, how's the state of Israel looking at this first meeting of the Board of Peace?
Well, for us, it's very important. It's very important because I think we're in a small, narrow window of trying to disarm Hamas by diplomatic means. And we've been waiting for a few months now to try and reach that second stage, which start with the very simple declaration that everybody had it unanimously, which means that Hamas must disarm. Now, whenever Israel has the path through diplomacy and not through military means, we will always choose diplomacy. And if there is enough international pressure to be put on Hamas to disarm without military means, this is going to be the perfect results. And then we can start concentrating on what's going to happen next. But nothing can happen before they disarm. And I think it has to be very clear during this session and during this meeting that this is a time for the international community. Every time they were yelling and screaming or having speeches about trying to stabilize the situation and going through diplomacy and through discussion, this is your opportunity, okay? Put pressure on Hamas, put pressure on the countries who have the leverage to pressure Hamas into disarm, okay? And it can happen. I mean, Trump has brought incredible results that no one thought are possible. And I truly believe it is a possibility, but it only happens if there's enough pressure on those countries who have the leverage to pressure Hamas to disarm.
So the argument with bringing people or countries like Turkey and Qatar to the table, who are great funders of Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood in general, is exactly that. That's the argument, at least, that's being made, which is those are the countries that can put leverage, put some pressure on Hamas to actually do something. Has Israel seen any of that leverage being applied, any pressure beyond sort of public statements being applied on Hamas by those countries?
So I think that Trump has put in the past also, and he's putting now quite a bit of pressure. Think about it. The countries like Qatar and Turkey and Egypt. and this is something that is so important to understand. The leadership of Hamas, the ones who are making the decisions, are not in Gaza. Okay, those are billionaires who are being hosted in those countries. So their businesses, their bank accounts, everything is there. So there is leverage to be put on that leadership in order to disarm Hamas. And once you understand that, and I think, more than so many other leaders, present and in the past, Trump gets the Middle East. He understand. He understand the challenges. He understand the problems and the dynamic, and that sometimes strength speaks more than words. And in that sense, I think that's one of the reasons why he was able to bring results that are stabilizing more of the difficult situation that we have in this neighborhood.
So I was here when Trump spoke at the Knesset. It was by happenstance. I was in Israel and was able to score an invitation. It was incredible to be there. And the part that I'm sharing not is to say that I was there, but is to underscore the excitement that the Knesset had. Even
Okay.
members of the far left. By the way, it was very funny to watch some of the far left members of Knesset get up and applaud every time Trump would say something, except when he would say something positive about Prime Minister. They would sit. It was a sort of funny dance that you see at the State of the Union in the United States. But despite the fact that there's a lot of support in Israel for Trump, I mean, inordinate support everywhere across
Yeah.
the political spectrum, is there a fear of Israel losing control of what will happen next in Gaza because of Trump's involvement? Not just Trump's involvement, this whole board of peace, and Israel may be losing a seat there. Israel didn't even have a seat in the beginning, didn't want to join or wasn't invited. There's been a lot of reports back and forth. Now Israel is there. The prime minister was in Washington last week. That's one of the things he did, right? Joined the board. He's sending his foreign minister to this meeting. But is there a fear of sort of losing control of how Gaza is shaped?
So obviously there's a lot of concerns. Okay. The fact that the CMCC, the big military American base, and they're now controlling most of the situation in Gaza, including the humanitarian aid, the eyes that they have, everything. I think in some ways, seeing on the positive side of it, um, I think that the world, or I'll say military leadership, international military leadership, is understanding better the military strategic situation that we've been in the last 2 years when it goes through the hands of America. Because, first of all, America is considered like a, uh, you know, um, non one sided or not part of the conflict. And so they're more objective. So whatever they report is more objective and they see it more reliable. So when Israel says it, they doubt it, they, distort it, or they just don't take it, this information. But when the Americans are bringing out their information, then they consider it more reliable. So I think now there's a better understanding for them for the very difficult military situation we've been in and we are in now. But, we have concerns, obviously. The fact is that any trial or any attempt or anything that will be tried in Gaza, the people who are going to pay the price, and this is the price of life or death, is our people, is our children, is our family members and friends. And so we are very reluctant to go into those major adventures because every time we tried something, to go towards the Palestinians, to give them an autonomy like Gaza. Gaza was this experiment of the two-state solution, and it blew up in our face in the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, with our families, little girls being raped, entire families being burnt alive. No one would accept that. And when a failure after failure after failure of all of these crazy experiment that the international community have demanded from us have blew up in our face, we are very reluctant into trying any new experiments. And, I think people should understand more of our concern. Saying that, I think that we haven't had a better friend than Trump in the White House. And I think he understands our challenges and our needs to keep our families safe and secure. And so the propositions that he's bringing are finally propositions that are outside of the box and not just the same mantra or the same obsession, many European countries had in the past. And I think these are things that we can try, but we have to set the ground rules. And it's very simple: no terrorist organizations, you know, no radical Islamist ISIS lovers or, jihadist lovers who are controlling an entire population with arms, who are pushing those moves. And I think this message is one of the most important message that we need to bring in in the next conference of the peace board. And I think we Israelis are at least more in ease knowing that Trump has a veto in those conferences, in the decision making, and it is a person we trust.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's more than a veto. It's being controlled by the U.S., which
Yeah.
an American
Yeah.
American Jew, I think it's likely a good thing.
Yeah.
It's better than the alternatives, that's for sure. My last question on the Board of Peace, and we'll move on, has to do with the ISF. The ISF, we've tried this before with UNIFIL and things like that in the north. And when you bring international forces to fight in someone else's fight or to protect a border that's not their border, it's not the same thing, right?
Yeah.
In the north, we saw, and we would see the UN. Them report to the UN, well, we've seen the buildup of Hezbollah, but it's not our job to stop them, just to report about it, right? Like, what the hell are you doing there? Now we see the ISF, I think Indonesia says they're going to send in troops.
Yeah.
How does that conflict with Israel's number one priority, as I understand it, which is to disarm Hamas? They're not doing it voluntarily. There's a lot of pressure. We haven't seen any willingness of them to do it. Some people, again, like I said in the intro, are optimistic and think they're going to do it. I consider myself an optimist, but on this, I think I'm a realist, and I don't think they're going to do it voluntarily.
Yeah.
Having foreign troops there, will that impede the IDF's ability to go in the other direction to forcefully disarm Hamas?
So most of the declarations from those countries who are looking into sending a stabilizing force are saying that they will not go in before Hamas is disarmed. And that has to be the ground rule. Now, if Hamas is truly disarmed and we can know whether they are or not, I think that's okay. I think also, if, that was enforced by UNIFIL, that Hezbollah was disarmed, that there's no armed forces in there, and that they do their job, because their job was not just to take notes.
Right.
Okay? And they failed that. But I think that once Hamas is disarmed, once you take out their civilian power as well and their capability of rearming, because at the end of the day, Gaza has two borders, the Egyptian border and the Israeli border. And when you make sure that no more arms are being smuggled in, then I think this is a more secure, not completely, but more secured option. But are they going to disarm only by diplomatic means? Let's be realistic. Probably not. Like, reality shows that not, and it will probably be Israel's military means that are going to disarm Hamas. After that process will be done, whether through diplomatic means or through military means, then the stabilizing forces can go in to maintain the peace and stability for the Palestinians. This is not a force that needs to clash with Israel. There is no clash. Okay, they don't need to guard Palestinians from Israelis because we don't want to be there. What their job is to maintain the peace and the security of the Palestinians against terrorist organizations who are there already or that will be attempting to form themselves in there.
So one procedural question for the political science nerds that listen, like me: what role does the Knesset have? I know you're a minister, so you have two hats, right? So people understand you have a ministerial position, which is like which is a cabinet position, right, under the executive branch, but you're also a member of Knesset. What role does the Knesset have in Gaza now moving forward? So now, as the war starts winding down? Is the war still considered, are we still considered in wartime? Are you still considered in wartime? So the war cabinet's making these decisions. When does the Knesset step in? Does the Knesset have a say at all on what's happening in Gaza?
So, two things. The first thing is, as much as it seems like, maybe the war is over and it's very easy to just jump in back to your routine lives, and everything sort of back into normal where nothing is really normal. The fact is, we're still at war, okay? The war is not over. There are major events almost every day. Hamas is attempting to kill our soldiers. They have hundreds of violations of the ceasefire, attempting to, go through, infiltrate into the yellow area. They're attacking our soldiers there. So there is still, combatant, situation in Gaza almost every day in trying to enforcing the ceasefire and to push Hamas back into the red line, or in the red line. The second thing is, the Lebanese border, where Hezbollah is building back its power. Sometimes once a week, twice a week, there's an active front on our Lebanese border, which might erupt almost on every single day. We are waiting for the Lebanese government to enforce the ceasefire and to disarm Hezbollah, where they're building up their power quicker than what the Lebanese government is disarming their power. Our Syrian border is absolutely insane with what is happening there right now. This is literally turning slowly into an ISIS state. Okay. Al-Shara is, his forces are butchering the Kurdish. They are attacking Christians and Alawis and Druze. This is literally in 8 years from now going to be an ISIS country. Okay. So there's activity there almost every single day. With also forces who are trying to genocide the Druze people in Al Sueda. So this is actively as well. I'm not even talking about what's happening with Iran, where we're like sitting and waiting almost every single day for different reports and news on what's happening, because we know the front line is Israel. Whether they try to divert the attention and destruct, world attention, they turn to Israel. They blame Israel. They attack Israel. And so, me, a mother with 3 children, thinking almost every day, are they going to be alarmed today? Are my girls are going to be safe? Do I need to prepare the shelters? What's going to happen? It's not calm, okay? What's happening with the Houthis? Okay, they are literally having a siege, a sea siege, towards Israel, attacking ships still. There's still major issues there. So we are still at war. And as much as it seems like it's calmer every single day, things can just completely change. And then we go into the parliament role in what is happening. And the parliament role during these times, so he has 2 major roles. One is legislation, the other one is oversight. And the oversight is extremely, extremely important. Less the legislation during these days, although some are important. The oversight is very important because there are, I can't share everything, but I'll say there are major events and operations and intelligence that is coming. And, for example, the Committee of Security and Foreign Affairs have a major role in confronting the executive branch. So our military, with intelligence, with things that are happening, making sure they're prepared, making sure that the balance of power between the armies is always towards our advantage. Because we have a small army. Our only advantage is technology, intelligence, and expertise. And so we always have to be ahead of the game. It's not the quantities, as we're a very, very small country. So they have a major, major role in making sure that we are prepared and that we guard this advantage.
Super interesting. It's those of us from the outside, it's like Many people think there's one person making all the decisions, right? We know that's not the case, although the prime minister is sort of knows how to operate better than anyone else, maybe, or
Yeah.
definitely in Israeli politics. But there are different branches and different groups that are involved in these decisions. I want to be respectful of time because one part of me wants to dive into that because it's so interesting to me, and also talking about. We have to do a full other episode on the inquiries that the fight about the October 7th
Oh,
inquiries.
wow.
But we can't do that in 5 minutes.
Wow.
So we'll table that for another day. But I don't want anyone to think I'm ignoring that. I think that's a critical topic that we have to tackle a full hour just on that. But I want to talk about Iran because I think everyone you speak to in Israel, that like you mentioned, it's the number one issue. People have go bags. They have their Iran bags. They're going to go to friends' houses. Whoever has the best bomb shelter. Right, sort of learning from the experience of the last round with Iran, what's going to happen next. In the United States, it's interesting because it's in the newspaper every day. I read probably every article that comes out in the American press about Iran, but it's not top of mind. Right, it's not the first story in the news hour any night in the United States. Well, here it is. So let's kind of back into it. What's the goal from Israel's perspective to re-engage with Iran? Right.
Wow. So look. Our main concern is the existential threat. Now, there's the wider, long-lasting, or more long strategic plan of the IRGC, the Islamic Republic goal, which is world Islamist dominancy, and they're working towards it. But our interests are to make sure there isn't a current existential threat on the state of Israel. And it concentrates on two major topics. One is the nuclear power, because we've seen what the intentions and their capability. And if they have the capability, they will use it. And so this is one of the major things. And the other one is the ballistic missile program. Okay. And we've seen its destruction during the Operation Rising Lion, what they were able to do here in Israel and how destructive it was. So try and think about 10,000 missiles like that being sent towards Israel. But it's not just a threat on Israel. They already are in range of Europe. Okay. And Europe should consider that very, very carefully. So as much as it is Israel's interest, this is a world interest. So our goal and our objective is to make sure there's no existential threat on the state of Israel. And we'll do everything to make sure, that our enemies cannot destroy us. And then there's the long terms, which is not being discussed now. It is not in some cases, yes, and this is what we're trying to talk about, Iranian proxies. So let's dive down a little bit more.
Sure.
Just on that. The IRGC, the Islamic Republic of Iran, has a strategy to apply and to push Islamist ruling over the world in a few different fields. So they go through military means, economical means, cultural means. Their rivals, the Muslim Brotherhood, are in a race with them about who's going to lead the new Islamic world order, okay? But the IRGC are more advanced than the Muslim Brotherhoods. But the goals, the intentions, the tools, it's all the same, okay? So Iran has spread armies all around the world, okay? In Africa, they have major operations. In Europe, they have headquarters and operation. In Canada, in Latin America, I mean, what happens in Venezuela is not just a wimp or something that is coming out of nowhere. The IRGC, by its proxies, one of its biggest military muscle are Hezbollah, okay, who are located mainly in Lebanon, but they operate all around the world. But this is the army of Iran, of the IRGC. They have set operations all around Latin America. Now, you need to understand, they are controlling most of the illegal drug and weapons trafficking routes. Now, if I want to translate it just to, the everyday American, they have military operation operating every single day in Latin America. When they call death to America, it's one of their goals. It's one of their objectives, okay? And they already have armies in Latin America. During the times of Operation Rising Lion, some of the leadership, the political leadership, has tried to flee and to take their families out of Iran. At least 700 of them fled to Canada. Okay? Ask yourself, they didn't go to Qatar. They didn't go, I don't know, to Azerbaijan or Tajikistan or Pakistan or anywhere like that. They fled to Canada. So the real military threat of Iran is a threat on America. When you see those gangs, the cartels, who some of them are controlled by the IRGC because they're controlling the guns and the drugs, the roots, okay, most of them. So when you hear about those gangs invading America, taking over neighborhoods, killing Americans, okay, don't take it as cartels. These are IRGC military operation in attempting to cross the red lines in America.
What's interesting is during right after the deposing of Maduro, arresting of him and bringing him, we had Carlos Jimenez, U.S. Congressman Carlos Jimenez, who's from Miami, Cuban American, who's very, very involved in Venezuela, and he laid out just how the base of Hezbollah in Latin America is Venezuela, or was now Venezuela,
Yeah.
hopefully was.
Yeah.
Not just the base for military operations, but for financial livelihood, right? So they were trading through the oil markets in Venezuela to be able to fund.
Not just the oil, the drugs, the weapons. Okay.
Of course, yeah. They're the ones who were powering, or who have been powering a lot of the drug trade, or most of the drug trade into the United States, which is interesting because people think about the 1990s when it was sort of these cartels in Colombia. Now, it's run mostly by Iran through Latin America into the United States.
Yeah, and this is just the military operation. I didn't even start diving in to the economical front they're operating all around the world, the cultural one, the cultural centers they are building.
Religious centers, yeah.
These are conversion centers. They send them for internship back in the Tehran University and bring them as Shia IRGC imams in Latin America, in some countries where, if you take 20 years back, there wasn't even a single Muslim citizen there. So there's a whole strategic operation that they're working on in your own front yard. This is not even the Middle East or Africa or Europe. Okay, so their goal is the same goal. It's not going to change. The IRGC are evil. You've seen what they've done to their own people, butchering them. The reports are saying, the opposition is saying 40,000 people were butchered in the streets in Iran. Peaceful protesters that were just massacred there. Children, teenagers. If they can do that to their own people, and they call death to America, think on what their goal, what they can do in America.
The best news for people in the Middle East, for people in Israel, looking at the United States and what you're talking about now, is that we have Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. For the first time, I think, in U.S. history, we have a Secretary of State who really understands Latin America, cares about it, understands the nexus, both economically but also from a foreign policy. So I'm getting tons of notes on the screens from your team. I know you've got important stuff to do. So I'm going to ask you one final question. When diaspora Jews who are very, for those who don't know what that means, Jews outside of Israel who are very engaged with Israel, like myself, a criticism I get from friends in Israel is, well, you only focus on foreign policy. You only focus on Israel's foreign policy and security. There's lots of other domestic issues in Israel that you're not paying attention to. And I do pay attention to them. They just don't know that I do. But there's lots of issues, domestic issues, whether it has to do with the ultra-Orthodox, and their involvement in the army or not, the welfare systems there, other domestic issues related to farming and agriculture that are hot topics, the judicial reforms, of course, lots of different issues that come and go. You really have a pulse, I feel like, both on the foreign stuff as a deputy foreign minister, but also on the domestic issues, which is very interesting. So this next year, likely we're going to see an election in Israel. No one's really talking about it yet, but just it's the way the cookie crumbles. How much do you think the Israeli public is going to focus on, or how much weight do you think they're going to put on national security and foreign policy issues versus domestic issues? What's going to drive this next political cycle?
I think the main component in campaigns is going to be security, especially after what we've been through in the last 2 years and before that. This is going to be the major topic and the major issue. But you also need to understand that the politics in Israel is different to the ones in America and Europe. And as much as us Israelis, we want to see us a little bit more as the European political.
Big mistake.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
You know, what drives the voters in Israel is not a left and right ideology and philosophy like in England or America or Australia, between the conservatives and Labour. It is very much Middle Eastern. It's very tribal, okay? And it is very personal. So you have the Ashkenazi ultra-Orthodox party and the Sephardic ultra-Orthodox party, and the more religious and the more secular, and the Arab religious party and the Arab communist party. And it's more like Iraq and more like Lebanon when they have the Shiite party and the Druze party and the Sunni party. And so this is something that we don't want to reflect on ourselves, but it's very much like that, and it is very, very personal. And most of the Israelis vote by the person to represent them, the one who had the party, and not the policy. And as much as everyone to think, oh, no, we're voting on policy, no, they are voting on personality, and they're voting by tribes, unfortunately.
And for people who complain about the system here or in the United States, I'm reminded of Winston Churchill's famous quote, which is, "Democracy is the worst system of government other than all the other ones." So anyway, Sharren Haskel, Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Gabe. It was a
I
pleasure.
love that we're looking at the clock and we both wish we can continue talking.
Yeah,
I can tell there's
absolutely.
lots more to dig into. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I know I've been out for the last few weeks. I was sick. I got the flu. Worse than COVID, by the way. This flu this year was worse than COVID. Then we had a couple guest cancellations. It happens, but we want to make sure to bring you guys the best guests. So make sure to follow, subscribe, like, share, do all the things you do to support podcasts, and we'll see you next time.